Hey Fit Pros, it's your host Tyler Valencia here. Before we get to this episode, I quickly want to share a free resource we have on the KIPS website and YouTube channel. If you're struggling with your online workouts or just want to see the items that we recommend, check out our virtual training resources page. You'll find breakdowns on streaming setups, reviews on microphones, and other free videos that can help you build your fitness business today. Did I mention they're free? Go check them out at the link in the description or head over to our website to find them under the blog tab. Welcome to episode 65 in the KIPS podcast. My name is Tyler Valencia and I'm the president of KIPS and Time to Train Fitness. Welcome to our first discussion episode of the KIPS podcast. So doing things a little different here. There's no guest. It's just me. And we're going to be talking about a topic that came up over the last few weeks for me. I mentioned it to another Fit Pro rather recently in a different podcast that I host. And I thought it was a good one to bring up to Fit Pros and have them think about and also provide some feedback. While you're listening, thinking about it, and maybe something comes up in your head, throw us a comment on Instagram on the post or on Facebook or even in the KIPS private Facebook group, Fitness Builder Plus. Those are all areas that we can share information and hopefully get this information out to new Fit Pros wanting to enter the industry or thinking about how they can get started. So the topic that we're going to be diving into is online workouts and if they are a good route for first-time instructors. Something to think about, really. With this topic, let's provide a little background. So I started to think about this a few weeks ago when I was talking with one of my instructors with Time to Train Fitness, and we were talking about a potential new hire. And it was brought up how this instructor had never taught in person. And a couple years ago, this would have been one of those things like, oh man, a new instructor. I don't know about that. But over the last 2 years, online workouts have become very popular and they're here to stay. So thinking about, that's not really an issue. That's not really something that is a deterrent anymore, in my opinion, that all they've done is taught online, because that's maybe how some instructors have started over the last 2 years and gotten their reps with teaching online. Now, taking this step even further, when I investigated this instructor a little more, watched some of their online workouts that they had done to kind of get a general idea, what I saw was that this instructor was a constant communicator with their cues, with their motivation. And in my opinion, that's a trait that is sometimes developed over years of being within the fitness industry. That's something that someone has to work on, that they have to evolve in that area while they become an instructor, whether it's a group fitness instructor or a personal trainer. They need to work on their communication, work on their cues and their motivation to build those pieces around themselves. So this got me thinking now about entry-level instructors, and with online workouts being a very viable option for instructors, and can it be something that's viable for newcomers, somebody just starting? Prior to 2020, all I ever heard were countless debates about, if you want to get in the fitness industry, you need to take XYZ certification. But really, is that the only path, the only viable path to being in the fitness industry? You need to take XYZ certification, which is an entry-level certification. And I'm going to talk about certifications in just a bit. But over the last 2 years, more options have come up, more options that help people work on different characteristics. And it's something to think about. Let's think about it just a step further here. If you started doing online workouts over the last 2 years, one of the top benefits people were talking about was being able to train clients from across the country. So why can't we apply some of those concepts to an entry-level instructor? If teaching clients from across the country is a benefit, and now you're not having to compete with the instructors in your gym, and now even though you're on a global scale or nationwide scale in terms of instructors out there, you are now opening yourself up to a bigger market. And that's a whole nother topic, but it's something to think about, that you are now being able to train people, that word of mouth plays a bigger role, or even how you market yourself plays a bigger role, because you have a much bigger sandbox to play in. Let's now talk about some issues that an entry-level trainer will face from an educational standpoint. To give a little background so that people listening know that I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere and that there's some validity behind it. Prior to starting KIPS in 2016, I worked for two of the top education companies, Nesta and NCCPT. Both of these companies, I worked on the personal trainer education. And then when I started at KIPS, I helmed the KIPS personal trainer program. So 3 certifications, working on them, knowing the ins and outs of what's inside them, also looking at competitors, seeing what they have in their programs. That's all part of what I've done from an educational standpoint. With both of those companies, I also helped with the accreditation for those companies. So I'd say that I have a pretty strong understanding of what's in these programs. And I could also throw on top of there having taught live workshops for entry-level certifications and having to cram as much information as I can into a day or 2 days. Not to brag now, but I've also had countless talks with directors of education for some very large gym chains. And it's always the same thing. How do we get our instructors better trained? How do we get them ready for day one when they're on the gym floor and we need them to sell training, pick up clients in order to stay within the industry or even keep their job? The dilemma is usually, how do we develop the communication skills of entry-level instructors? How do we get them to make a connection with a new client, showcase their knowledge in exercise science, and provide who's ever standing in front of them with a quality workout? As a fit pro like myself or anybody listening, we know that topics like anatomy, physiology, nutrition, exercise selection, these are all important. We know that. But for an entry-level instructor, isn't communication and interpersonal skills, aren't those just as important? It's definitely something to ponder, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but it's definitely something fun to talk about. And that could be something that you throw in the comments, discuss, so that we can open that discussion up. Now let's talk a little bit about what I've been thinking with the first-time instructors and online workouts. So one of the biggest traits I've seen with crossing over to live training, teaching live, is cueing. I believe it was our past guest on the podcast, Brooke Johnson, who talked about how she doesn't feel like she has to rely on the music to motivate her class participants. You think about a cycling class. When you go in there, music is loud, it's bumping, it's dark, the bass, you just feel all those things. And if you wanted to, you could just let that music go and people are going to love it. They're going to feel it and they're going to push harder. All those things that you can depend upon. Even in you're teaching a boot camp class, HIIT class, you could taper back on the yelling, the screaming, and just let that music go. And some people will just love it. They'll vibe with it and they'll get the motivation they need. With online workouts, you need to keep that constant communication. You need to keep that communication going because typically you don't have that music factor. You have royalty-free music that some people might say is not as good. In my opinion, I don't have a problem with it, but of course I do own an online workout company. So maybe people will say that I have to say that, but with royalty-free music, talking on top of it, providing that cueing, providing that motivation is a factor that you work on. You have to build that up. Not everybody is built with that trait that they can just keep talking, keep motivating. And those are things that this guest, Brooke Johnson, shared that really helped her. When she went back to in-person, she felt that she didn't need to rely on that music and that she felt like she could keep that motivation, strong motivation going because she worked on it. And that, in my opinion, it's huge. It's very big. And this kind of goes back to one of the big things that I keep coming back to is that if a first-time instructor can learn communication skills while teaching online, it's going to put them ahead of the game. If they do decide to go teach in person or if they keep doing online, that communication is going to be big. So why do I think the communication is big now? I keep talking about it, I keep saying it, but I feel like that is part of the evolution of a fit pro. When a new instructor joins the industry, you might see that their communication skills need to be worked on, their interpersonal skills. They might not be as talkative because they're not as comfortable yet. They're not as comfortable talking with the client or being able to guide them through an exercise because they just learned it. Then they're getting the reps on it. So the ability to constantly cue, in my opinion, is part of that evolution that you see that growth. Typically, maybe a year and a half, 2 years in, you see them being that constant communicator because they see how it helps the client learn and it puts them in their shoes that they are saying, oh, wow, this cue does help them this way, or this is why that cue might help them. So over time, this comes, the reps, the saying it over and over and over. But with online, the fitness instructor is forced to learn these because it decreases the dead space. So they're having to see that, oh, wow, I do have to keep talking. I do have to keep queuing. Or take it one step further, they realize that talking keeps the dead space out, and you never know who's on the other end, who's listening. And they might be a client, a member that needs constant reinforcement because they might not get it the first time. I tell this to fit pros all the time, talk about it on podcasts, that your client or whoever's watching an online workout, they most likely don't want to be there. They don't want to be there. They're not happy about exercising. And therefore, you have to constantly cue, because a cue you might tell them that you might say, oh, this is my best cue, or this is something you need to focus on, that might go right over their head. They might just completely disregard it, or it might not even hit with them. So saying it over, maybe 30 seconds later, reinforcing it, those are all things that make sure that they're processing it, because we all process things at different rates. And those things can be crucial from an online aspect. One other benefit to think about is when fitness instructors need to make adjustments. In person, a fit pro can manually adjust the client to help them feel something in a certain spot. But online now, the instructor is thinking of different ways to translate the information. I keep going back to how people process and how people are learning exercises. So with online, you have to be creative. You have to be creative with how you're cueing, even how you're demoing it. What are you showing? What are you showing in frame? How are you making sure to point out what you need to get across the screen or through the screen? And all this is typically being, if you're doing one-on-one sessions, while being conscious of what their client's surroundings are. These are typically some of the freedoms that we don't think about when we're teaching in person, because we have it easier. We have it easier where we can pinpoint, or we can show somebody, or we can make those cues just come across better. So it's definitely something to think about with fit pros teaching online, is that they have to really work at those. They have to work on their visuals, their cueing, to really reinforce those and get better at them. And in my opinion, I think that's a big benefit, because once you do go to in person, now you have that background of, okay, I have all of these cues lined up of what have worked for me, and you have those reps that have built up. The last thing that I want to touch on as a benefit is the creativity factor. Now, what I'm about to say isn't meant to be a call out or anything like that, but a common thing veteran fit pros will say about newbies is that they follow a similar track, meaning they do a lot of the same exercises, assessments, or even choreography. And is it a negative? Maybe. But think about it. That's what they were taught. That's what they were taught, and they're trying to apply it. So in my opinion, you got to give them credit for that. I know that some veterans might be like, oh, newcomers, all they do is the same thing, the same assessments, yada, yada. But that's what they were taught. And it's part of their growth is learning new exercises and learning how to teach them to their clients or in a class. Now, with online workouts, equipment or exercises can be limited by what the client or the class participants have available. This factor alone causes creativity, in my opinion. It causes instructors to be creative with what they have and sometimes to think outside the box. I've seen it before, and I've even been there. I remember it. I remember the days when I was a personal trainer working in a gym that I would have my program set out, the exercises that I wanted to do with the client based off of their needs, based off of my assessment, based off of where I wanted to get them to. And you start training them for a session, and all of a sudden, an exercise you can't do. Somebody's on it in the gym, or it's not available, whatever that might be, something comes up. And how does somebody handle that? Are they able to quickly think on their feet, switch, and go to a different exercise? Sometimes some fit pros might not, because they haven't had those reps yet. So the creativity factor is big. Being able to go through these makes them evolve much quicker. Now, of course, someone listening is going to say that these can all be applied to someone in person. And yeah, sure, of course it can. But in my opinion, a good instructor onboarding, it's hard to come by. There are few gym franchises that offer quality training, and it makes it harder to keep instructors in the industry. So take that for what it's worth. I'm not trying to cause any drama, stir the pot at all, just pointing out some facts. Let's now wrap up this episode with some tips for how first-time fitness instructors can grow at home or even online. And this could be also a good one that if you want to chime in on the topic and throw a comment on one of those platforms, please throw them in there. Everybody's here to help everybody. The first one that I got, and this was actually mentioned by a guest that I was recording with this week on a different podcast, but what they said was take as many classes from different formats and see what you learn. Learn, watch, and take away from it what you can. Watch and see how they're applying some of these cues. Watch the visuals, see what they're doing, because now this is somebody that's actually doing it. They already filmed, they're putting it out there, and you can actively watch and take stuff away from it. There is the element of comparison, and that was something that I talked about with this guest on that podcast, but being able to watch it to learn is hard, because we want to compare ourselves and we want to say, oh, well, I'm not as good as this person, but be there to learn. Learn, take away what you can and apply it, try it, make it your own. Those are all important pieces of the evolution. The next step I have would be to just start. Now, this is something that I tell new instructors with my team at Time to Train, is that we need to get you started. We need to get you filming for that first one, because we can learn so much from it. We can see where you're at, and we can make a strategy for improvement. We need to see how your lighting is. We need to see how you're cueing. We need to see how you're standing. We need to see your volumes. All these things are important because you can pull information away from it. You can start to create that plan for, okay, on my next one, I'm going to work on this. My next class, I want to work on my cueing. I need to point out this. I need to hip hinge better. I need to squat better. Or I need to work on this cue. You never know. All those things are so important to just get started, because you also build that confidence. You build the confidence up for teaching to a camera. You learn how to motivate through the screen, and you start to see the differences. And now the last tip that I have, and it's one that I've talked about in different tutorials, but it's to pack your area with notes and reminders. What is behind the camera, what's on the sides, what people don't see is all that stuff. All they see is what's in front of them. They just see you and see what you have in frame. So don't feel bad. If you need to pack your area, you need to put a whiteboard, you need to fill a paper with notes, that helps you just trigger something in your head and it reminds you what you're going through. Do it. Go for it. Now, that's been this episode, this discussion on if an entry-level trainer can start with online workouts. It's been a new one. It's been something that we definitely want to hear from you. We want to hear what you think. Drop a comment on Facebook, Instagram, or in the KIPS private group, Fitness Builder Plus. This is a rather fun one to talk about. There's really no wrong answer in my book. So let's share, hopefully help a new fitness instructor with their journey. And thank you for listening. And until the next one, I'll see you online.